Hello, everyone, and good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for the CVSD annual budget event. My name is Rene Sanchez, and I am the proud superintendent of Champlain Valley School District. And so we'll begin by introducing our panel and board members who are on the screen. And so we'll begin with Bonnie, if you could say who you are and your role, and board members, your role and the town you represent.
Hi, everyone. This is Bonnie Birdsall. I'm the Director of Digital Learning and Communication for the school district.
And I'm Gary Marcus, the Chief Operations Officer for the district.
I'm Megan Metzler. I'm a school board member representing the town of Charlotte. I'm on the chair of the finance committee. And I'll turn.
And she's also the vice chair of the board.
Vice chair of the board, yeah.
My name is Dave Connery. I'm a school board member from Shelburne, and I'm also a member of the finance committee.
Am I next?
Yes.
Hi there, I'm Angela Arsenault. I'm the chair of the board and I represent Williston.
Thank you, Angela. And we also, we have a small enough audience right now that it'd be great to know who is here with us. So if you could state your name and I guess your affiliation with CVSD. So we can begin.
Oh, yes. Hello, I'm Jillian Ojala. I live in Heinsberg. I have a child that goes to HCS, and I am the co-chair of the PI, which is the PTA in Heinsberg.
Thank you. Let's see, Laura.
I'm driving, but I'm Laura. I don't know if you can hear me. I am the new director of HR and also a parent of children at Charlotte.
Thank you. Garrett.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gareth. I live in Shelburne. I have a student at SCS and I work at central office.
Thank you. Margaret.
So I'm Margaret McNerlin. I'm a Heinsberg resident, and I'm very concerned with education and funding it well.
Thank you, Margaret. Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Martinez, and I'm a parent in Shelburne.
Thank you so much. And ma'am, who just entered the room?
Hi, my name's Julie Zach. I am two kids at Heinsberg Community School.
Okay. Thank you so much. Our annual budget meeting can take multiple formats, and we're prepared to go in any way that we need to go. But we'd like to start off as a conversation. So if attendees have any questions that they'd like to pose, we'd be happy to address those early on. And if many of the questions end up being part of kind of the presentations that we have, we can use the presentations to refer to them as possible. And we can include those. I think they're already on the website, so people can refer to them if we don't get to them today. So if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask at this time, if you're on Zoom, please raise your hand or raise your hand on the Zoom icon. And if there's anybody in the audience here that would like to pose a question, we could do that too. Margaret, I see your hand raised.
So my concern is that we have all sorts of short-term challenges with the school budget, but I don't want to lose sight of the long-term challenges, particularly that come with development. So Heinsberg has approved about 400 new homes. And I want to make sure that by the time those homes are built, there's some place for those kids to go to school. So I'm interested in long-term planning. And I appreciate that the short-term crunch is also happening. But that's my concern, is long-term budgeting.
Like, they take that one?
Yeah.
You can. I can.
Yes, so we are aware, Margaret, of the potential development in Heinsberg. We have gone through the review process for anything that is permitted thus far. And we do sign off on Act 250 requests as a school district. We don't have the power to stop them, but we have the power to advise whether we have capacity in Heinsberg or not. Our analysis right now, when we take the demographic report and the development plans for Heinsberg, is that we are probably okay from a capacity standpoint until about 28 or 29. And as part of our long-term capital planning, we are taking kind of a holistic look at all of our facilities from a structural, electrical, mechanical, and capacity standpoint, to plan some potential mitigating factors if in fact all those homes are developed and more, or the projected or more students come to those homes.
But Margaret, I'd like to add as well is that we are, since we've recently done a capacity study of Heinsberg, the building itself as well, and we're in the building regularly. We know that we have some space that we still can continue to fill out within the building. But like you said, we need a long-term solution. So we are very, Heinsberg is kind of in the forefront of our mind because we know that the building itself, as well as kind of the footprint, give us challenges for updating it the way that it is right now. And so we are definitely in your corner.
Can I just ask one more question? When you say that things look fine until 2028, does that mean with busing Heinsberg kids somewhere else, or does that mean accommodating them here in Heinsberg?
Accommodating in Heinsberg right now.
I think I would also point out that a big part of the strategic plan that we just went through includes facilities. So Renee and the community and the district have gone through a very significant strategic plan that, and one of the priorities which includes operations and facilities. And Gary and others have been working on the finance committee is focused on over the next, we definitely hear you from a long-term perspective and we understand the challenges that we face. But facilities and what we do at each of our schools is a very important part of that strategic plan that we're working on. So from a board perspective, we are working to make sure that we understand what those long-term needs are. And one of the things that Gary has done and that the leadership is doing is that they are understanding for every single one of our buildings, this is what Gary said, but they're understanding for all of our buildings, what are our needs, what are the needs for the future of the district. So it is absolutely a part of our strategic plan that we're executing against for the next 5 years, which takes us to 2028, 2029. And it's definitely not, the board has not lost sight of it. And it's something that we think about as we go through the budgeting process and we think about bonding and what we need to do from a facilities perspective every year, making sure it's done in a way that the community can support.
Angela, you have your hand raised.
I was just going to add that I really appreciate your interest, Margaret. And I wonder, Gary, if you could talk a little bit about potential future opportunities to become involved with the facilities study group, if that is, that will involve community members at some point.
It will. Like I see right now, I see it in kind of two phases. Like shortly after town meeting, we are planning to do a small group study, probably one person, one community member per town to start, and just to do kind of a comprehensive review of the information of the studies that we've gathered for all elementary schools over the last 6 years, to get just community input, board input, staff input on what we think those things say and what are the priorities when we compare school to school. Like once that's completed, with the board's direction, I would see the board kind of impaneling a larger community working group for the actual development of the 5 to 10 year capital plan for the district.
Great, that's helpful for me as well. And Margaret, if that's something you might be interested in, please feel free to reach out to me or Gary or Renee or Megan, anyone really on this call. We'd be happy to keep you informed of opportunities for involvement.
That includes finance committee meetings, which includes operational updates fairly often. So I know we'll be talking about, there'll be a lot of budget discussions coming up, and all of our finance committee agendas and meetings are warned, and you're more than welcome to attend that, especially if we're talking about anything. And it's really important for the finance committee and the board to hear the voice of the district.
Thank you, Margaret. Any other questions? Any other thoughts that we can address?
Would it be helpful to give a board perspective of where we're currently looking at the budget for FY25?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just interested in, I've read a little bit about kind of some of the shorter term issues. Similar question to Margaret around kind of balancing shorter term and longer term. So you answered that, but more, just in terms of some of the immediate pressures that my understanding is related to how the state changing its funding, as well as the changes, obviously, with COVID and federal funding. And that there's some pretty significant impact on our district with some of that. And but that's kind of like the extent of my knowledge, so understanding a little bit better.
That's a lot.
And how that.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And just that, obviously that creates a lot of different, then you're coming to like, well, there's all these competing priorities, and how do you think through that? And I imagine that's pretty much the crux of the budgeting process coming up, but
Yeah.
just understanding, where that is at this point, and then how this will kind of unfold for you all.
Yeah, I mean, I can start off from a board perspective, and then Gary and Renee or Superintendent Sanchez can give a perspective too. From a board perspective, everything that we've been talking about as a board, this is my third year as a board member, we've been talking about it for all 3 years, has been the impact of Act 127 and the impact on our district, because it does impact us overall, and that there's even though the impact of Act 127 on our tax rate is outsized compared to many other districts, and it will impact us negatively. And we essentially have a 5-year bridge to get from where we are today to where we essentially have a 5-year bridge to try and address that. Had we not had that 5-year bridge, and it was just they made that change, was enacted, our tax rate should have gone up. The estimate at that point was 16%, and that's at a district level. There's a bunch of the other thing that you'll learn the more time you spend here is there's a lot of different numbers that go into a specific town tax rate, but at a district level, it would have gone up 16% overall, which is that's without us impacting or having to think about any other high inflationary environment we've been in for 2 years, anything else. So doing nothing, even though our spending had not changed, it would have been a 16% increase just on the tax rate. And that's not because the school district spent more money. That's not because our costs were higher. It really is a function of how the tax rate is determined on the state level. So at the same time, when they developed this, when Act 127 was put into law, they realized that would be a significant impact on districts like ours. So they've given us a 5-year window where the maximum that our tax rate can go up is 5%. So we know per year. Yes, 5% per year. In order for us to, so that is a known for 5% per year from 24, 25, 26, till FY 2030. Till FY 30. That's a no. That is the expectation of us. In order for us to try and reduce that tax rate to something less than 5%, would require us to make significant changes to the way that we educate our kids and our students. And that is 100% a function of the way that the law works. Nothing with what we've done as a district. So when you hear 5% is our tax rate, that has nothing to do with how hard the administration is working and the board is working to try and fund education in a way that we think is responsible and responsive to the needs of our students. So this is year 1 of 5, and we know that so long as, so what we need to do is we need to manage our budget, we need to manage our thought process over the next 5 years, where we know that cap is only 5% in a way to, or that cap is 5% in a way to lessen the impact once we get to FY 30. And that is what we've been doing as a board, and we've been talking about as a board for 3 years. This is the first year where we know 5% is the overall budget impact overall. And we're thinking about what are the investments that we need to make? What are the things that we need to do as a board? And what are the things that we need to be communicating to the community so that this is not a surprise and they understand where they are and how we're thinking about it. So for FY 24, we feel comfortable and this is all preliminary. This is just based on what our last board meeting was, and you're welcome to come to all other board meetings, is from a preliminary view, we feel that we can continue to have a baseline budgeting, so continue to have the same programming that we have this year in FY 24 and FY 25, and that we can make we're looking into what investments we can make overall, and we will be able to do that without that's what we're also looking into whether or not or how we can fund some of the other things that are that are going away, such as ESSER funding as well. So we need to think about what are the things that we can do to invest in right now that will help us in the future. And that's really the discussion that the finance committee has been having and the board has begun to have for this year as well. At the same time, we do have significant facility needs, and we know what our facility needs are, and that's what we're trying to look at from an overall perspective. But for FY 25, the first discussion points of the finance committee and as a board have been to try and maintain all programming and invest and discuss where we need to spend additional funds. Is that the way you think about it too? Anything from your perspective as
No, I think you explained it really well. I think we've been emphasizing to both the community in discussion with the board that we do have time, like we do have 5 years to try to mitigate the potential impact 2030 and beyond. If we are proactive, smart, identify our most effective programming, our most effective supports, and balance that with what we are going to need to do to invest in our facilities to make them support education in the long term.
So that's where we stand right now. We still have a long ways to go. We still have many budget meetings to go before we approve a budget for the voters to vote on. But that's the preliminary view of where we stand for FY 25.
Oh, Angela.
So I'm not going to add anything to what Megan just said, but I want to commend Megan for that explanation and for her general commitment to understanding this really complex. I mean, the way that you just explained it, Megan, I think made it sound relatively simple compared to what it is. So I really just want to lift up your efforts and thank you for digesting it for all of us. It's because it is quite complex, and I think you just did a really great job of explaining the position we're in and the approach we're taking. So thank you.
And I do want to highlight, because this is so complex, Angela, that I do want to highlight that when the board says or anyone says that the tax rate will increase 5%, that does not necessarily mean there are other inputs that go into what your tax rate is at a town level and based on your individual circumstances. So That is kind of the general number that we've been discussing, but there are several different metrics that go into what your actual tax rate is that are 100% outside of the control of the board and the school district, and that has to do with your HUS appraisal versus other factors, and it also has to do with income sensitivity and other factors as well. So the board will generally speak about a 5% tax increase, but if the impact on your tax bill is something other than that, it's not because we're misspeaking, it's because there are many different factors that go into an individual's tax bill overall that we have the district and the board have no control over. We do our best to understand it, and we do our best to be able to explain it to journalists and any community member overall. But the 5% is really on what we as a board call the pre-common level of appraisal, pre-common level of assessment or appraisal tax rate, which does not take into your house value or the town values, et cetera. So it is a very complex method, but I don't want to misspeak and say it's a 5% increase and then have it be something different, because it very well could be. But I think the other important thing to realize is a lot of those factors are outside of the control of the board and the school district. And from a board and a school district perspective, we're doing everything we can with the factors and the levers that we can control to make this, to provide the best educational opportunities for our students that the community can support. But there are many levers there that the district and the board have no control over whatsoever.
Well, doesn't it also depend on each of the town budgets and the different levers that each town has to raise revenue? Correct. It's going to vary across the 4 towns.
Yes.
Quite a bit, actually.
Yes.
Are there any limitations in Vermont on the ability of districts to raise philanthropic funds? From different sources? Refer to the experts on that. Not that I have a big check, right, or, I'm just.
There's so
different options.
There's so many ways that philanthropic funds can be used, like it's not a
Right.
one menu fits all. But there are ways that some schools establish 501c3 to be able to have their own organization to help support school budgets and additional programming and supplies, all that kind of stuff. There are major gift opportunities for schools as well. Things like that have been used locally in the past, not locally to CVSD, but like the field project at South Burlington, their turf field was partially philanthropic funded through a donation from a family. So there are ways that philanthropic funds can be used by school districts, but we'll leave the details to the lawyers, because when somebody comes and asks us if they want to donate $500,000, the first call is to our attorney. Kind of figure out.
Is it typically done at the school, kind of the school level at this point in terms of that kind of fundraising at this point, kind of school by school? There isn't like a district-wide fund or anything. Like in Massachusetts,
Not philanthropic.
Yes, sometimes like a school district level fund that's sort of like the private money side of the public district side of me.
No,
There are legal issues with that, obviously, to set something like that up, but I just didn't know if that was, because I don't even have seen a model that's used anywhere in Vermont, other than at the school level,
I don't think so.
not at the district level.
yeah, that is something that we are definitely looking into, because I think there are opportunities to receive philanthropic funds that would be, and if we were to have a board manage that, then we'd be able to distribute them equitably. Right now, much of the donations either come to PTOs or they come to the booster clubs at the various schools.
Yeah, I'm thinking of things from like, they're not easy to get and it's not common, but like national foundations and things like that. That Vermont is sometimes a good place for that, because we're like part rural, but part not, and small enough that there's a lot that you can sometimes see, in terms of outcomes from that. And I just would have thought, because I was trying to understand a little bit more about there's the spending side and the investments that you're talking about, kind of short and long term, but there's sort of the revenue side. Most people, myself included, don't really fully understand, other than like hearing about property taxes, don't really fully understand kind of the revenue inflows to the school district. Because they're kind of complicated.
They're very complicated in the state of
And
Vermont.
I was like, it's not that simple to kind of explain it, but it is kind of just like, there's money coming in, and there's money going out, and so people understanding the money coming in a little bit better. I don't know if that would help or not, but
Yeah, that's a really good point. And we as a board, we spend a lot of time on the money going out and what that looks like. And then from a money coming in perspective, we know that our buckets of funding, we know that we're going to have a certain amount of funding allocated to from the state for special education. We have an idea as to what we need to raise overall. And then there are some grant funds that we receive as well that we're aware of, but they're all generally federal that we know of, but outside of federal and state funding, the revenues that's really what most of our revenues are.
yeah, there's not a lot, and there might be a way to, what I've seen that comes out from the district, there's a lot of nice, like, kind of infographic stuff and stuff that tries to distill stuff for people, so there might be something like that that just says like, hey, there's not that many choices here.
No.
And some of them, like federal stuff too, also has to be used in a very specific way. I don't know, this might be another piece that helps people understand, because they always just think, oh, it's just my taxes, and, can I really trust that that money is being spent the right way, because I'm just seeing my taxes go up, and those are valid issues.
They're absolutely valid questions to be asking,
But then there's other money that is flowing in, it's just got some.
and that's what we've spent a lot of time as a board over the past few years talking about from an ESSER perspective, and obviously those were still federal funds, but it was something that we as a board needed to make sure we understood, and we actually just had a presentation at the board level about how we have, what those ESSER funds were and how the district has allocated them and why we're comfortable that they went to the right places at the right time. And frankly, that's the discussion as a board we need to have about, well, how important many of those resources were for us, and what are those part of the investments we need to continue to make going forward now that funding is not going to be included in our FY25 budget.
I'd also ask, just or add, related to what you're saying is, the board always has a series of budget-related board meetings, and the first one is just after Thanksgiving. And the full schedule is on the budget page of the website, but it starts breaking down the different aspects of funding and where the funds go.
And then in January, the board takes the budget on the road. Once it's been approved.
Yes, we go to town meetings and we go through
Select board.
select boards, town
Rotaries.
meetings, rotaries. That being said, this is my third year on the board, and we are constantly trying to elicit feedback, and the feedback that we get is very helpful to us, because we get less of it than I would have thought as a board member. So thank you for being here tonight. And, I'll be talking to the PTO at CCS in December about this. As a parent of CCS and a board member in Charlotte, and those are areas that we focus on too, but.
Yeah, I was just thinking that as you were saying that, I was like, how do you more people kind of, participate? It's hard for a number of different reasons, with families, but.
Yeah, I think in the district, we're trying a lot of different things,
Yeah,
and if there's something that's obvious that we're missing, then please let us know. But that's part of our finance committees as well with Bonnie every year is what should we be doing in order to get the word out and get feedback. And it's been a very, Dave has had a much longer history on the board than I have, with a little break in between, but
yeah, I agree. Like we try really hard to elicit feedback, and from a bunch of different reasons. We're really happy that there's 2 people here and 4 people online that are offering some feedback. But, I think we've come to this realization that if we have one meeting in one central place, that's our highest hit rate.
yeah,
Whereas if we spread ourselves out over every single town, 5 different meetings. Then we get one person at each
Right.
meeting, it doesn't, it's a lot more work than we get feedback for, so. Hopefully this is. Like, I always hope like, at least that no one's missing this, you know, that wants to be here. So, I mean, there's some people, everybody has conflicts and hopefully, and I think the fact that people can watch it from home does help, and you can watch all of our budget meetings, which those occur at a cadence of 2 every 2 weeks. We do 2 per month.
It's actually more than that now because it's finance committee one week, indicators committee the following week, and then board the,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's lots of opportunities to watch the.
And our inboxes are always open.
Yeah.
One of the other feedback opportunities that we offered for the budget this year was including budget questions on the panorama survey for the families. The teachers and the staff had the opportunity to do decision packets within their school in order to give us feedback on the budget. So if you were able to fill that out, this is other information that we will be gleaning and sharing with the board and with central office leadership team in order to prepare for budget season.
One other thing I'll say about the recorded meetings that are done, what's the group that does it? I want to say New England Cable News, but it's not New England. Media Factory, right? So Media Factory will, when they publish the meeting after the fact, they break out the video by portions of the agenda. So if you watch the recording, you can go right to the budget section. And you know exactly where it is, and you can watch that section or any other section that you're interested in. Save time.
I was wondering if it's not, so I don't know if it's about the budget or not, but I was just thinking about like, and I don't know what the ethics is like, you said it's at the local school level part too, and is, just thinking of like the equivalent of like parent community outreach workers, you know, like where you're, because I think people, like I think about if I go to, some people go, the things people go to, right? So you're gonna go to your kids' sporting events, you go to like the kids' plays, like where you think about kind of everyday conversations sort of happen, but if people, you know, there were a handful of people who were willing or were trained to kind of engage in conversations about these issues or just raise awareness in some way. There has to be some sort of like kind of group, you know, training or conversations, but just a little bit more of like a meet people where they are kind of thing, but the people who are in those groups, I don't, you know, obviously that's a little project organized, but
Yeah, Superintendent Sanchez is our farmer's market extraordinaire.
yeah.
You go to, I think, I agree with you, and I think it's something we can definitely do, on the sidelines of I was on the sidelines of plenty of CCS, soccer games and other things as well, but yeah, I think that's something that we can definitely continue to do, and I know that, Superintendent Sanchez and Colt have really made that a focus, and that doesn't mean we can't do more,
But I'm thinking of a way that isn't just saying, well, the onus is on you all as the school board and the superintendent. Oftentimes, who people may sometimes feel a little intimidated talking with, some people don't at all, obviously, but some people do, and feel more kind of like parent to parent.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know, you have like a button that's like, you know, a parent talking about, you know, school district stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know, just, it might not have to be too complicated, but you need like a small group of people, I think, from the districts, from each of the school, I mean, not the district, from each of the towns.
In the past, we've done things where we've gone to the PTO or PIE, and it sort of became that where the board members come and do a presentation to the PTO, and then those parents can actually talk about it to other parents within the school.
Yeah.
So that's one avenue we've tried before, school specific. You know, we do also, like, there was some stat when we were doing Act 46 and we we're combining all the school districts. You know, if we concentrated just on the parent, you know, in Shelburne, we only touch 1,500 people, but we actually had 7,000 voters. So we had to figure out how do we get the other 5,500 people, so.
Yeah.
We do, I feel like it's easy to get the information out. It's not, I mean, I'm not belittling.
No, I'm
saying
not.
a lot of times, I think we concentrate on going to Rotary.
Right.
But maybe we should also make sure that we do go to the PTO and other organizations, maybe a little bit earlier so that they can start talking before the vote in March, so.
Well, we've got our next.
I'm going to PTO in December.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'm here tonight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And we have our next council of PTO meetings in late January for the express purpose of talking about the budget.
I'll leave that. There we go.
Yeah, you're right, though, that and parents are, you know, you have kids in the schools, you're automatically like somewhat more invested for the most part. It's there's a wider citizenry, you know.
Yeah.
The bigger group of people, which is interesting, I think about.
Yeah. Which is sometimes harder to compare.
Right, right.
I guess I would ask, since for anyone who's here, whether it be PIE, is it PIE in Huntsburg?
Yeah.
PIE, PTO, parents, to the extent you're hearing things and raise it through Superintendent Sanchez, raise it to board members. The input that we really need about when we think about what our priorities are and what are the confluence of changes that are headed our way. That's the term that we confluence, convergence. Convergence of issues, of matters that we have to work through. And I think we're really lucky as a district that we, you know, we do have, you know, we do have many, challenges to address, but we're coming from an area of strength. And we come from a community that really cares about us. And my view is that we have a board that really cares about this district and administrators that really care about it too. So we have a lot of, we do have a lot of challenges coming our way, but we're addressing it from an area of strength, coming out from an area of strength, and we have our eyes open to it. And it's been something we've been discussing and that we're, you know, we're ready to work through together. And we need community support and feedback on the best way to do it. So there's a lot of challenges, but I think that we're in October 2023, I feel like we're in a good spot to work through it together as a community, which is what we're gonna need to do to be successful.
Yeah, and I think like the topic that we're all focusing on, which is the changes from Act 127. I think that the legislation was well-meaning and they worked hard to enact something that would change the way it was working. I think we're all a little bit surprised at how it's changes. And
Yeah.
so we're trying to evaluate that and
any unintended consequences.
yeah.
Yeah.
Gary, will you, I guess, highlight kind of the points of the budget calendar? And then we'll see if we have any more questions after that, and then we can potentially wrap up.
Just a second, kick me out of my account.
There's a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot.
Yeah, so the calendar through, really, we're almost to November, but the highlights from here forward in the calendar, we have met several times with the Finance and Facilities Committee already. November 7th is our next meeting of that committee, and we'll give them kind of the first pass of the budget, the preliminary budget that our team is developing. We have a full CVSD board meeting on November 28th, where that same presentation, inclusive of any feedback from the Finance and Facilities Committee, will be shared with the full board. December 5th, we have a full board regular education presentation. The 19th of December is operations and maintenance with construction, IT, food service, transportation, and the central office budgets. We have a committee meeting on January 8th, where we'll discuss revenue and tax rates, which is kind of the final piece that the board will review the full board will review the next night on January 9th. The 9th to the 22nd will finalize any changes directed by the board. And the 23rd, there'll be a full board meeting that will by final approval and approve the warnings that will go to the voters on town meeting day in March. So those are the highlights of what's upcoming.
And all of our finance committee meetings take place in Shelburne at the central office. They'll also be available on Zoom. And then all of our board meetings take place here in this room and also on Zoom. So any final words from the panel or any final questions from the audience? Margaret, please go ahead.
So I assume you know this already, but there are an awful lot of people who vote who are not engaged in the process and don't understand the budget. So they look at an increase and they say, oh my God, you know, they don't understand why there's an increase. And so they just say no. So the question is, how do you get to people who are voting and that's their first exposure to the budget? And can you put like a budget primer with the ballot?
One thing that we have been doing for the last few years is mailing to all homes in the district a primer. And that actually has the language from the ballot itself and an explanation of what to expect on the ballot, as well as kind of what's contributing to the budget being as it is. So we will continue to do that. It's a mailing that goes to every home in the district. But we also try our best to put articles in the local paper, post on Front Porch Forum so that we can reach people who are not necessarily parents in our schools. But we're open to any other suggestions you have.
We attend select board meetings, Rotary meetings.
And those select board meetings are covered by the local press,
paper,
and so
yeah.
articles are written about those as well.
And then we go to record a video interview in Burlington. I forget the name of the was it?
The campaign access.
Yeah, it's part of the.
Cable
access.
Cable access channels. So it was really fun.
And we do put all of these recordings from the board meetings and the cable access channels up on the budget page of our website as well.
Are there different segments of the budget where like there's more that is discussed and debated, right? Like there's some, when you were listening to some topics, when I heard the first part of the committees, like there's some stuff that's like, there's not much to talk about because we have to pay for X, Y, Z. You know, like it's not going to change that much from one year to the next. It's not something that you have much decision or in, you know what I mean? Like it's going to just move over into next year's budget at what it needs to be versus other stuff where, you know, there are different sort of choices to be made. Cause what I'm getting at is like attending some of the meetings, like when you go, you're kind of going through the formality of the meeting and all the things you have to cover. And as a parent who's sitting in the audience, you're like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Because I'm listening, which is nice. But I don't really know that much about how our school buses need to run, so I'm gonna trust other people to do that because they're an expert in school buses, and if they say we need another bus and we need 5 buses and they have to run, I might have a question, but like, versus something that might be more related to the facilities conversation, or some things that more really affect like our impact on the school environment, or people care a lot about food, or, you know, behavior, or whatever, you know, things like that, that sort of are a little more fluid and where you do have decisions to make that are not as fixed. I don't know that.
Yeah, so, we do spend a lot more detailed time in the finance committee meetings compared to the broader board meetings. So finance committee meetings are warrant meetings where you can bring any of those matters up. If there's a specific thing that you're really interested in and that you want, that's something I think it's important that you start raising that to board members now, so we can think about that and that we know with the public and we know what feedback we've got from the community overall as we go through that. given a lot of the challenges that we have, we do know, we are looking at this overall of kind of a baseline budget and continuing programming overall, and the difficult decisions that we will be making as a board, I think, you never know, over the next few months are going to be how we continue to, what decisions we need to make about continuing funding for things that were grant funded or ESSER funded that are no longer there. That's going to be a discussion that we've asked Gary and we've asked the district to bring to us, and I think that's going to be an area that we have to make decisions and understand what it is. So that's going to be a real focus, I think. And anything else, any other investments that we feel that we need to make as a district is going to be another area of real focus. As a board, we don't spend a lot of time thinking about, money going to dry erase markers or, a lot of those important things because they're important, they're covered by it. But that's given the way we've developed our budget, and that's where we want to focus. But if there's specific programming or things that are of real importance to the district that you as a taxpayer or as a parent need to hear more about, then those are great questions to ask the administration, and they're great questions to ask or raise up so that we know we can think about it as we have those discussions.
So how as a parent do you know things that are grant funded that might be going away? Like, how would you know what that is? I know about one thing just so I happen to be talking to somebody at school and, she mentioned it and I was like, oh, that's interesting. But otherwise, like, how would I know?
Yeah, there's a presentation on the website, called Budgeting for FY 25 and Beyond, explaining the convergence. That outlines the general categories of support we're talking about that have been funded through federal emergency relief funds, ESSER most recently. And it lists what the district spent that money on over the last 3 years. So that would give you an idea of the things that we're talking about, potentially including in the general fund if the administration and the board agrees that those are too important to remove.
It says budget through 2025. That's what it's called.
Yeah, budgeting for fiscal year 25 and beyond.
Okay.
There have also been articles in the newspaper, in like local articles, maybe not in Heinsberg, I think it might have been Shelburne, but I do think that I was not able to make it, but they did have kind of a forum overall about that, and we're happy to think about other ways to get that out to parents beyond newsletters and all the other kind of levers that we've known to pull.
Just to clarify, the presentation that we just referred to is actually in a video that from the town hall that Gary and Renee hosted a few weeks ago, because we felt that just putting those slides without somebody talking about them would potentially raise misunderstandings or concerns. So watching the video where they are going over those slides provides more clarity about the slides.
That video is dated October 1.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's also the board meeting too, which was the August. Also the August board meeting, so it'd be easier. It might be easier to just click on that. As Dave explained earlier, click on those materials and you'll get to that presentation.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. It was I had fun. Thank you so much for sharing your. It's talking budget next. Look at, I got to sit between these two people talking budget. Why wouldn't you be excited? So anyway, so thank you so much. As Gary highlighted, we're going to be talking about budget certainly from now till town meeting. So do not hesitate to join us for the finance committee meetings or the regular board meetings, or if you see us out in the wild, please stop by and say hello and ask us a budget question. We'd be happy to answer it. So thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you for coming.